Hello, this is Father Vladimir and I welcome you to the episode number 19 of our Orthodox cooking show. Today I'm going to share with you the recipe for my rye sourdough bread. And for this recipe we need a cup of water, 2 cups of all-purpose white flour, half a cup of rye flour, half a cup of whole wheat flour, about teaspoon of fennel seeds, about teaspoon of caraway seeds, about quarter cup of sourdough starter that was well fed, about tablespoon of molasses, and about 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. To begin with, I will combine the water into this mixing bowl, and again this is a recipe that will require kneading, unlike the one that I shared before, which was a no knead recipe. This one requires kneading. So I put the cup of water right into the mixing bowl, and I'm adding quarter cup of my starter in there, and I will make sure that the starter is whisked completely, that is the starter is dissolved and will turn into kind of like almost milky consistency. And if you were here, you can already smell the yeasty smell of this starter. Once I mix it well and incorporate with water, the next thing I'm adding molasses. And if you can, I suggest to use all natural ingredients and organic ingredients, and from flour to molasses. But if you can't find, or it's not available where you live, you can just grab molasses available from any grocery store. And I'm trying to get as much of it, because it's sticking to this ramekin, as much of it as I can. And I'm gonna whisk it again to incorporate molasses into my sourdough starter and water mixture. And you can see that the mixture is turning this nice brown, golden brown color. So I'm gonna make sure that I incorporated well all of it. It will stick to the bottom, but don't worry, just make sure that it's more or less the color that you see right now in a bowl. It began to foam a little bit. There's a lot of good stuff going on. The yeast is interacting already with the sugars and molasses, and it's beginning to be very, very happy. So the next thing, I'm gonna add rye flour to this mixture and the whole wheat flour to this mixture. At this point, I will spread, before adding the white flour, I will spread around on top the fennel seed and the caraway seed and my salt. It's gonna get mixed anyway. It doesn't really, the order in which you put ingredients doesn't really matter. And then finally I will add my white flour into the mixing bowl, and we will go to our mixer, and we're gonna mix this dough together. Once you have your ingredients into the mixing bowl, you just start on the low and start incorporating the flour and water and all the ingredients together. It should take a few minutes for them to come together. It's gonna be a little bit drier dough comparing to the recipes that we made in the past the no knead recipe, this is gonna be a little bit drier though, but that's the way we want it. So let it mix for about 15 minutes, and once the ball of dough comes together, we'll resume the video. So about after 7 to 10 minutes, the dough begins to look like this. It came into the nice ball, and I'm gonna just stop the mixer and show you the consistency of this dough. It's kind of on a harder kind of dough, but we're gonna let it rise overnight, and we will continue our video in about 12 to 16 hours. After this dough is risen, it should be doubled in bulk. Just before you set the dough to rise for 12 hours, I just want to show you one more time this little ball, how it looks before rising. And for overnight rise, I suggest you cover it with a plastic wrap, so it doesn't form a skin on top of the dough. And from this point on, you just will have to wait about 12 to 14 hours. You can go as far as 16 hours for the first rise, but we will do about 12 hours. And you want your dough to rise at the room temperature, about 70 to 72 degrees room temperature for 12 hours. So I'll see you tomorrow when we finish this recipe. So it's been about 14 hours since we started the recipe, and I had it the dough at the room temperature for about 14 hours, and this is how it looks now. Let me just remove this little plastic, and this is how the dough looks now. You can feel it, and it's very soft and actually smells very good. It smells very yeasty, and now we're going to shape it into the pre-shape into the ball, and I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit of flour on this board because we need we need a little bit so it doesn't stick. So, and I'm gonna scrape this dough. You can see all the air pockets on it. It's been rising for 12 hours, so it did pretty good. But now we have to deflate it, and I'm just gonna deflate it with my hands, and it's still on a pretty tough side. So I'm gonna deflate it, and I'm gonna make it into a ball like this. Just make it into the nice round ball after you deflate it. And once we make into this ball, before shaping it into a loaf the way I usually do it, like an oblong shape, I'm gonna let it rest for about 15 minutes, covering again with plastic so it doesn't form any crust on top, and we'll come back in 15 minutes and we'll continue the recipe. So the dough has been resting for about 15 minutes, and I just want to explain a little bit why we switched the scenery. We started our episode in the church hall kitchen, but it's kind of cold in Buffalo today, so we decided to move to the house. But anyway, so the dough has been resting for about 15 minutes, and the reason you do let the dough rest after you work with it because the gluten kind of toughens up when you work with it, and you have to relax it so it's more workable and you can shape it. So to shape in the final loaf, this is not really the way professional bakers do, so don't call the police on me, please. But this is what I do. I kind of stretch it into the oblong shape a little bit, and then I started to roll just like you would roll like a roll of something, you know, a roll. And once you can get to this point where the seam is at the end, I kind of squish it a little bit to seal it, make sure that it's sealed, and then I continue to roll my loaf like so. And I don't work too much with this. This is how it will be the final shape for the rising. Just make sure that the seam is on the bottom of the loaf before you place it for the final rise. And for the final rise, I actually rise it already on the baking sheet that I will bake it on. And I already lined my sheet with the parchment paper, and all I will do, I will just transfer this loaf. You see, with the seam down, I'm gonna transfer it and put it on my baking sheet. And this way, I'm gonna let it rise for another hour and a half to 2 hours before baking. And this time I'm just gonna cover it with a towel, and I'm gonna put it in a plastic bag. The reason I do that is, again, to prevent forming any unnecessary crust on top of the bread. So, as you said, for the final rise before baking, about half an hour before the end of rising, like if you set for an hour and a half, in an hour you can turn your oven on. If you set for the second rise for 2 hours, you know, in an hour and a half, turn your oven to 375 degrees so it preheats and it's ready when the rising is over for the bread to be baked. So the dough has been rising for the second time for about an hour and a half, and I already have my oven at 375 Fahrenheit preheated. And as I told you, I put a little bit of a plastic on top, just a garbage bag, but make sure to use something that is unscented rather, so it doesn't permeate with some smell that you don't want to be in the bread. And this is how the risen loaf looks before it goes in the oven. And now with the razor blade I'm gonna make slashes. I'm not too good at that, but usually I start and I go make one slash across like that, and then 2 additional slashes on the sides. The reason you want to slash your bread is that you want it to allow to expand. So the dough is about double in size already, and it probably will have another oven spring that perhaps even triple in size, but we'll see. I'm just gonna go and make these cuts a little bit deeper so there's a lot of expansion room allowed. And so now we're gonna put it in the oven. So as I said, my oven is at 375 preheated, and now we're gonna put it in the oven for about half an hour, and halfway, about 15 minutes into the baking, we're gonna just turn around so it bakes evenly. So we put it right in the oven, and I'm gonna set the timer for 15 minutes to check on it after 15 minutes and turn it around if needed. Probably will need it. And once the inside temperature of the bread is 200 degrees Fahrenheit, it's baked. So the bread has been baking for about 15 minutes, and now it's time to turn it around. And I'm just gonna for a second, I'm gonna get it out so you can see how it's expanding. It's not expanded as much as I thought it would, but it expanded a little bit. So back in the oven it goes for another 15 minutes, and then we'll check for the temperature to make sure it's ready. Okay, it's been another 5 minutes, and I'm pretty confident that the bread is ready. I can kind of tell by the color. But just in case, I'm gonna take temperature one more time to make sure that our bread is indeed ready. And the temperature is you can see it's 200, just on the mark. So there's another way to tell whether your bread is ready or not. I'm gonna just take this paper out, and you can, if you tap on the bread, it has this hollow sound, so like so. So that's a really good sound. So anyway, now we're gonna let the bread rest for about 15 minutes, cool down, and we're going to cut it and taste it. So the bread was cooling for about 15 minutes, and I usually cool my bread on a rag like so it kind of has airflow around it. It's still warm. It's warm enough to melt the butter, because you can't taste the bread without butter. But usually to cut this bread, use a serrated knife. And let's see how it looks inside. I'm gonna make a first cut. The crumb looks really nice. It's well risen, very consistent crumb. I'm gonna cut another slice, and I'm gonna spread some butter, and we will taste it. And this is, you can see the crumb again. There are seeds, fennel seeds and caraway seeds, and it smells delicious. So I'm gonna spread a little bit of butter on top of this bread, because I can. And without butter, it kind of doesn't taste the same. And here's the moment of truth. This is a really good bread. Real nice crispy crust. And there's a tiny bit of sourness to it, and the aroma that comes from the fennel and caraway seeds, just amazing. So give it a try. It's not a difficult recipe. Of course, you need sourdough starter. If you have already sourdough starter, try this recipe. It's really, really good. And hopefully in the following days I will try to replicate this recipe for you, but using the regular yeast, so anyone can try it, because sourdough takes a little bit of experience to do. But I will do in a few days another recipe. Till then, enjoy your bread.